Upon examining the intricacies of silk and lace, one uncovers that the Victorians exhibited really unsavory characteristics. Historically, Victorians did not consistently bathe on a weekly basis, much less daily, and indoor plumbing remained an unattainable aspiration for the majority. Women predominantly endured the impact of peculiar hygiene habits. Let us awaken our awareness, confront the unpleasant truths, and uncover the realities around the ostensibly pristine Victorians. In the poorly illuminated streets of Victorian England, where coal smoke obscured the sky and industrial filth covered every surface, personal hygiene emerged as both a practical difficulty and a moral conflict. The period's association with hygiene illustrated its pronounced class disparities and changing societal perspectives, resulting in a compelling array of practices that varied from rudimentary to unexpectedly advanced. Charles Dickens brilliantly illustrated in Oliver Twist the deplorable conditions of London's East End, which starkly contrasted with the immaculate appearances upheld in the wealthy West End, where the air appeared notably purer. For the working class, bathing was a luxury seldom accessible. In London's congested tenements, entire families utilized a solitary cold water tap, assuming they were fortunate enough to have access to flowing water. The Saturday night bath evolved into a weekly tradition for those able to partake, with family members sequentially utilizing the same water, commencing with the father, followed by the mother, and subsequently the children in declining order of age. This technique led to the adage, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater," as by the time the youngest kid was bathed, the water had become so murky that the baby could be obscured from view. Public bathhouses, established in the 1840s, provided relief for certain urban residents, charging 1 penny for a cold bath and 2 pence for hot water. The Victoria Baths in Manchester, inaugurated in 1906 and referred to as Manchester's Water Palace, showcased the magnificence that such facilities may attain. These institutions functioned as more than simple cleansing stations. They evolved into social hubs where communities congregated and knowledge circulated as freely as the water. The affluent, conversely, relished the luxury of copper or tin baths in designated bathrooms, serviced by attendants who toiled to transport numerous buckets of heated water upstairs. Lady Montagu's correspondence from 1869 delineates her daily routine, highlighting the preparation of rose-scented water by her lady's maid and the arrangement of exquisite Turkish towels, which starkly contrasts with the grim conditions of working-class hygiene. Queen Victoria exemplified royal standards with her intricate marble bathroom at Windsor Castle, established in 1850, which had one of the earliest shower devices in Britain, a water cascade activated by pulling a chain. The soap industry had a significant transition during this period. Early Victorian soap was a rudimentary product, composed of animal fat and lye, sufficiently abrasive to strip away multiple layers of skin along with impurities. Innovative producers such as Andrew Pears transformed the market in the 1860s with his translucent soap, specifically designed to be milder on sensitive skin. The renowned Pears soap advertising, showcasing angelic infants and elegant women, emerged as emblematic images of Victorian marketing. In 1789, Pears engaged actress Lily Langtry as the inaugural celebrity endorser in advertising history, compensating her £100 to assert that her complexion was attributable to Pears soap. The middle and upper classes adopted these new pleasures, although working people frequently depended on homemade substitutes, such as vinegar rinses and oatmeal washes, which had been inherited through generations. A 1875 domestic guide by Mrs. Beeton offered recipes for artisanal soap. Utilizing rendered fat and caustic soda, a hazardous procedure that occasionally led to severe burns. The cleanliness of clothing emerged as a conspicuous indicator of social standing, resulting in innovative adaptations. Detachable collars and cuffs, which could be laundered independently from shirts, enabled even modest clerks to uphold an image of respectability. The creation of the detachable collar by Hannah Lord Montagu in Troy, New York, in 1827, rapidly disseminated to Victorian Britain, transforming men's fashion and hygiene standards. Women's ornate garments, which may weigh as much as 14 pounds, were seldom laundered in their whole. In 1859, the renowned fashion magazine, Godey's Lady's Book, said that a quality silk dress may endure for 20 years or longer with appropriate maintenance. Protective underwear absorbed bodily oils and perspiration, necessitating more frequent changes and laundering, while outer clothing were spot cleaned and aired out. The expression, airing one's dirty laundry, emerged at this time, denoting both the literal process of hanging garments to dry and the metaphorical disclosure of private issues in public. Hair care posed distinct challenges. The Victorian beauty standard of long, radiant hair faced the practical challenges of hair washing at that period. Prior to the prevalence of hot water usage, numerous women utilized dry shampoo composed of flour or applied it through their hair to absorb surplus oil. The renowned actress Sarah Bernhardt popularized rice flour as a dry shampoo in the 1880s. The hair tonic market surged, featuring formulations that include ingredients such as bear grease and coconut oil, all promising to sustain healthy, manageable hair. Macassar oil, referenced in Dickens's literature and so widely favored that it prompted the creation of antimacassars, protective chair covers to avert oil stains on furniture, was a blend of coconut oil, palm oil, and ylang-ylang blossoms. Oral hygiene techniques would appall contemporary dentists. Although toothbrushes were available, they remained costly luxuries until the late century. The inaugural mass-produced toothbrush was created by William Addis in England in 1780, with handles made from cattle bone and bristles from swine. However, they remained expensive commodities until the 1850s. Numerous individuals utilized homemade mixtures of chalk, charcoal, or crushed cuttlefish bones for dental hygiene. The widely known cherry toothpaste of the 1850s, notwithstanding its enticing name, comprised materials such as chalk, charcoal, and honey, a formulation that probably exacerbated decay rather than mitigated it. In 1847, Edwin Truman, Queen Victoria's dentist, formulated a unique teeth powder for her, comprising powdered cuttlefish bone, sodium bicarbonate, and myrrh, a concoction that gained popularity among the elite. The era's intricate connection between hygiene and morality was perhaps the most illuminating aspect. Medical experts such as Dr. James Johnson cautioned in medical publications regarding the perils of excessive washing, stating that it undermined the constitution and predisposed individuals to illness. The 1837 treatise, The Economy of Health, asserted that excessive bathing of the entire body is unequivocally detrimental. Concurrently, religious and social reformers asserted that cleanliness was akin to godliness, especially for women who were anticipated to uphold both their personal hygiene and the moral integrity of their households. In her 1859 work, Notes on Nursing, Florence Nightingale underscored the relationship between hygiene and health, stating, "Every nurse ought to be careful to wash her hands very frequently during the day." The urban-rural divide introduced an additional element of difficulty. Rural inhabitants frequently upheld ancient customs, such as using rainwater for cleansing and employing herbs for personal hygiene, whilst urban people progressively embraced novel commercial products and practices. In rural Yorkshire, as recorded by social researcher Henry Mayhew in 1851, families continued to utilize centuries-old recipes for herbal soap incorporating rosemary and lavender. This division represented wider contradictions between conventional lifestyles and the transformative impact of industrialization. Throughout the century, advancements in scientific knowledge on illness transmission progressively shaped hygiene practices. The cholera epidemics of the 1830s and 1850s ultimately resulted in enhanced water systems and an increased focus on sanitation in public health campaigns. Dr. John Snow's seminal research connecting cholera to tainted water at London's Broad Street in 1854 represented a pivotal advancement in comprehending the correlation between sanitation and health. However, transformation occurred gradually, and some Victorian hygienic practices endured well into the early 20th century, imparting a lasting influence on social history. Social reformer Edwin Chadwick observed in his 1842 report that the annual mortality due to unsanitary conditions and inadequate ventilation surpasses the fatalities from death or injuries in any contemporary warfare involving the country. The Great Stink of London and Sanitation. The Great Stink of London transformed urban sanitation. During the oppressive summer of 1858, London saw an environmental crisis of such magnitude that it jeopardized the stability of the world's most formidable empire. The Thames, formerly revered as the city's lifeblood, had transformed into a noxious amalgamation of human waste, industrial discharge, and decaying organic material. This was the result of decades of inadequate urban planning and rapid population increase, leading to the notorious phenomenon known as the Great Stink. The satirical publication Punch encapsulated the mood with a cartoon entitled Father Thames introducing his offspring to the fair city of London, portraying the river as a decrepit old man amidst human manifestations of sickness. In 1855, the esteemed scientist Michael Faraday cautioned of the looming catastrophe by depositing white papers into the Thames to illustrate its opacity, characterizing the river as an opaque pale brown fluid, in correspondence with the times. Prior to the escalation of this situation, London's waste management system was rudimentarily archaic. The city's 3 million residents depended on a disorganized system of cesspools and inadequately maintained sewers that frequently seeped into the groundwater. Approximately 200,000 cesspools existed beneath the streets of London, with their contents frequently overflowing onto basements and foundations. The conditions in St. Giles, one of London's most impoverished parishes, were exceedingly grim, as documented by social reformer Henry Mayhew, who said that basements were frequently inundated with sewage, necessitating residents to navigate homemade boardwalks. The night soil men, laborers who clandestinely emptied cesspools at night, confronted nightly dangers for a meager wage of a few pence. In 1850, a particularly tragic episode resulted in the deaths of 3 workmen due to foul air as they were cleaning a cesspool in Spitalfields. These wretched laborers, equipped solely with shovels and buckets, would descend into the foul depths to extract human waste, frequently succumbing to noxious vapors that resulted in numerous fatalities annually. The renowned diarist Charles Greville observed in 1849 that these individuals were the unsung heroes of London's underworld, undertaking tasks too dreadful to consider. The situation was aggravated by the advent of the water closet, flush toilet, in the 1820s, which was patented by Alexander Cumming in 1775 but popularized by George Jennings during the Great Exhibition of 1851. This invention, although beneficial for affluent homes, inundated the existing infrastructure, exacerbating the strain on already overloaded cesspools with excess water. By 1850, London possessed 200,000 water closets discharging 250,000 cubic meters of water every day into a system intended for dry waste. The contents inevitably entered the Thames, the river that supplied drinking water to a significant portion of the population. In 1849, journalist Henry Mayhew remarked, "The Thames is essentially a stagnant reservoir, into which all the contaminated sewage of London is discharged, only to be returned to the city with each tide." By 1856, the river had become so contaminated that reports indicated the copper bottoms of boats were corroding at an extraordinary rate. The summer of 1858 experienced extraordinary temperatures, with thermometers consistently registering 48 degrees Celsius 118 degrees Fahrenheit in direct sunlight. The Thames, transporting the refuse of millions, commenced to ferment. The odor was so overwhelming that Parliament, located adjacent to the river, endeavored to operate with drapes saturated with chloride of lime to conceal the scent. Charles Barry, the clerk of the House of Commons, documented the acquisition of 2,000 pounds of lime chloride and 200 dozen bottles of disinfection fluid in a frantic effort to render the building habitable. During a significant speech, Benjamin Disraeli abruptly exited the room, characterizing the odor as a Stygian pool that emitted a unbearable effluvium. The Times said that the odor was so potent it induced strong men to retch openly in the streets. The dominant medical theory of the era, referred to as the miasma theory, posited that diseases were transmitted by noxious air instead of pathogens. Prominent advocates such as Dr. William Farr and Florence Nightingale supported this approach, with Nightingale stating in her 1859 work Notes on Nursing that the first rule of nursing is to keep the air the patient breathes as pure as the external air. Although this viewpoint was erroneous, it paradoxically facilitated beneficial transformation. Dr. John Snow established the pivotal link between cholera and polluted water during the 1854 Broad Street outbreak, identifying the source as a single diseased water pump located at 40 Broad Street in Soho. His thorough door-to-door inquiry and pioneering spot map, illustrating clusters of cholera cases near the pump, established the groundwork for contemporary epidemiology. Notwithstanding the derision from the medical community, Snow's extraction of the pump handle notably terminated the epidemic that had claimed 616 lives within a few 10 days. Engineer Joseph Bazalgette, born in Enfield in 1819, became an unexpected hero of London. His ambitious proposal to build 82 miles of primary intercepting sewers and 1,100 miles of street sewers received approval with remarkable swiftness. The cubic project necessitated 318 million bricks, 880,000 yards of concrete, and 670,000 cubic yards of manually excavated earth. The Victoria Embankment, a significant project, not only accommodated sewers but also established new public spaces and subterranean train lines. Bazalgette's design demonstrated sufficient foresight to allow London's expansion well into the 20th century, as the primary sewers were constructed to manage double the demands of the existing population. His credo, "We're not merely constructing for today, we are constructing for the future," has proven prophetic. His sewers continue to serve London today. The project, at a cost of £6.5 million, equivalent to nearly £500 million today, was one of the most ambitious civil engineering endeavours of the 19th century. The evolution of urban sanitation beyond the confines of London. Cities around Britain and Europe commenced the adoption of analogous systems. The Thomere Aqueduct, an engineering accomplishment of Manchester, was finalized in 1894 and transported potable water from the Lake District, located over 96 miles distant, utilizing a gravity-fed system that necessitated no pumping stations. The £1.5 million project incited protests from early environmentalists such as John Ruskin, who opposed the industrialization of the Lake District. Paris had a significant transition under Baron Haussmann, with engineer Eugene Belgrand creating a sophisticated sewage system that evolved into a tourist attraction, featuring guided boat trips through the expansive tunnels. Victor Hugo characterized these sewers in Les Miserables as the conscience of the city, where all drains converge and all social issues intersect. The swift progression of the Industrial Revolution generated unparalleled environmental difficulties. Factory chimneys emitted black smoke into the atmosphere, resulting in dense, dirty fog referred to as pea-soupers, which severely obstructed visibility. The most severe documented event, the Great Smog of 1952, subsequently resulted in the deaths of over 12,000 residents of London. Charles Dickens eloquently depicted this in Bleak House. Smoke descends from chimney pots, creating a gentle black rain, with soot flakes as large as fully developed snowflakes. In 1845, the Leeds Mercury reported that local lambs had grown blackened by industrial soot, while in 1852, the renowned scientist Robert Angus Smith detected acid rain in Manchester, coining a term that would later be pivotal in environmental discussions. The initial environmental movements emerged in response to industrial pollution, exemplified by the establishment of the Manchester Association for the Prevention of Smoke in 1842, which represents one of the earliest coordinated initiatives to address this issue. Under the leadership of physician Peter Roget, renowned for his thesaurus, the organization effectively advocated for the inaugural smoke abatement legislation in 1843. Comparable groups emerged in other industrial cities, with the Glasgow Association attaining significant success in diminishing plant emissions by implementing more efficient furnaces. The effects of these sanitary measures were significant and quantifiable. The cholera epidemics in London, which resulted in 14,137 fatalities in 1849, became progressively infrequent. The final significant outbreak in 1866 was restricted to the East London area of Bromley-by-Bow, which had not yet been integrated into Bazalgette's new sewer system, so demonstrating the project's efficacy. Dr. William Farr, an innovative epidemiologist, recorded a significant reduction in fatalities from waterborne diseases in the years subsequent to the sewer system's establishment, with typhoid fever incidences declining by 75% from 1869 to 1891. Life expectancy in London increased from 37 years in 1850 to 50 years by 1900, mostly due to enhanced sanitation. The Great Stink of 1858 signified a pivotal moment in urban development, illustrating that cities could no longer disregard the environmental repercussions of industrialization and population expansion. The crisis catalyzed the emergence of contemporary civil engineering and public health infrastructure, establishing benchmarks that would impact global urban design. In 1860, the Times remarked, "The Thames is currently cleaner than it has been for centuries." London may yet exemplify the world in the discipline of urban sanitation. In his utopian work Hygiea, City of Health, Benjamin Ward Richardson asserted that the reformation of London's sewers signified the commencement of a new epoch wherein science and engineering would converge to establish cities deserving of civilization. Dangerous medicine during the Victorian era. The conflict that transformed medicine permanently in the poorly illuminated wards of St. Bartholomew's Hospital in London in 1847, a spectacle emerged that would appall contemporary medical practitioners. Surgeons transitioned from one patient to another, adorned in blood-stained aprons they regarded as symbols of valor, used unsterilized tools, and performing procedures with hands that had only been superficially cleansed on their garments. These hands may have just performed an autopsy or treated gangrenous injuries. The esteemed surgeon Robert Liston, noted for executing the swiftest amputation on record, in under 30 seconds, frequently held his bloodied knife between his teeth during operations at University College Hospital. At Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, James Syme would prominently exhibit his surgical coat, rigid with years of congealed blood and pus, as a tribute to his expertise. The outcomes were foreseeable yet, at the time, enigmatic. Up to 80% of surgery patients acquired post-operative infections, and nearly half succumbed. In 1847, the Scottish surgeon James Simpson observed that, "A man placed on the operating table in one of our surgical hospitals faces greater risks of death than the English soldier at the Battle of Waterloo." The conditions in maternity wards were similarly bad. In 1846, the mortality rate for new mothers at Vienna General Hospital's first obstetrical clinic was an alarming 18%, predominantly attributed to puerperal fever. The second clinic, operated by midwives, exhibited a mortality rate of under 2%, a variance that plagued Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis. His breakthrough occurred following the death of his colleague, Jacob Kolechka, who succumbed to injuries sustained from a self-inflicted cut during an autopsy. Kolechka's symptoms corresponded with those of women succumbing during childbirth. This prompted Semmelweis to enforce compulsory handwashing with chlorinated lime solutions, decreasing mortality rates to under 2%. His results were derided by the medical establishment, notably by Charles Meigs of Philadelphia, who infamously asserted, "Doctors are gentlemen, and gentlemen's hands are clean." Semmelweis died in 1865 in a Vienna asylum, potentially due to injuries sustained from guards, while his groundbreaking ideas were dismissed by his contemporaries. Years later, Louis Pasteur's research elucidated the correctness of Semmelweis's conclusions. Hospitals of that period were referred to be houses of death rather than places of healing. The Hôtel Dieu in Paris, one of Europe's oldest hospitals, routinely accommodated 6 patients in beds intended for 2, with various diseases intermingling in the inadequately ventilated wards. In 1788, Jacques Tenon recorded that the hospital possessed 1,200 beds yet frequently accommodated over 3,500 patients, with some compelled to rest on mounds of straw on the floor. A contemporary account characterized the air as so putrid that it condensed on the walls, trickling down in fetid droplets. In 1840, Surgeon John Flint South at St. Thomas' Hospital in London noted that the same sponge was utilized to cleanse the wounds of all patients in a ward, disseminating infection from one to another. The circumstances were so severe that some impoverished patients opted to die at home instead of pursuing medical care. In Martin Chuzzlewit, Charles Dickens described hospitals as locations where individuals were ill and perishing in multitudes, where visitors succumbed to illness and were removed deceased. The dominant medical doctrine continued to adhere to the archaic theory of the four humors, and the notion that diseases disseminated by miasma, malodorous air. Dr. Benjamin Rush, a notable American physician and signatory of the Declaration of Independence, persisted in endorsing bloodletting throughout the 1790s, asserting that he had extracted 4 to 5 quarts of blood from patients afflicted with yellow fever. This transformation commenced when Louis Pasteur, conducting research in his humble laboratory at the École Normale Supérieure in Paris during the 1850s, posited that tiny organisms were responsible for food rotting. His tests with swan-necked flasks conclusively refuted spontaneous generation in 1861. The scientific community expressed skepticism. Sir Henry Acland of Oxford proclaimed, "The notion that our esteemed science should be diminished to the examination of invisible animalcules is preposterous." In 1863, the prestigious medical publication The Lancet rejected Pasteur's concepts as Germanic theoretical speculation. Joseph Lister, motivated by Pasteur's research during his tenure as a young surgeon at Glasgow Royal Infirmary, achieved a significant advancement in surgical antisepsis. The surgical ward of the hospital was infamous for its hospital gangrene, so acute that the lime-washed walls had become blackened with infection. He observed that compound fractures, characterized by bone protruding through the skin, had an 80% death rate, but simple fractures healed effectively. He hypothesized that environmental contamination was the distinguishing factor. His initial success was in March 1865 with 11-year-old James Greenlees, who had endured a complex fracture due to a cartwheel crushing his leg. By employing carbolic acid spray during and post-surgery, Lister preserved both the boy's life and limb. The case was published in The Lancet in 1867 but encountered much skepticism. American surgeon Samuel Gross condemned it as the preferred theory of an eccentric surgeon overseas. Florence Nightingale revolutionized medical care despite her initial doubts regarding germ theory. During the Crimean War, she discovered the circumstances at Scutari Hospital to be deplorable. Soldiers reclined on bare floors amidst rat infestations and overflowing latrines. In collaboration with William Farr, she devised groundbreaking statistical techniques to demonstrate that a greater number of troops succumbed to preventable hospital ailments than to combat injuries. Her polar area map illustrating monthly mortality rates emerged as a significant instrument for reform. Dr. John Hall, the Army's chief medical officer, initially opposed her initiatives, asserting that the British soldier can endure anything. By instituting fundamental sanitary measures, consistent cleaning, clean linens, and enough ventilation, she decreased mortality rates from 42% to 2%. Her Notes on Hospitals delineated concepts that remain pertinent today. The foremost requirement in a hospital is that it must not inflict harm upon the sick. Robert Koch's systematic research in the 1870s and 1880s furnished incontrovertible proof of germ theory. In a makeshift laboratory in Wolstein, Prussia, utilizing a microscope gifted by his wife for his 28th birthday, he detected the anthrax bacillus in 1876. His display to Paul Ehrlich and other dubious colleagues in 1882, showcasing the tuberculosis bacteria through novel staining techniques, constituted a pivotal moment. Rudolf Virchow, formerly a critic, conceded, "I have witnessed it, and I must accept it." Koch's postulates, initially introduced at the International Medical Congress in London in 1881, established the scientific methodology for associating specific microbes with diseases. The effect was instantaneous. Within months, physicians globally used his techniques to detect novel infections. The execution of these findings encountered considerable social and professional opposition. In 1879, Sir William Savary, president of the Royal College of Surgeons, asserted that the carbolic spray is a mistaken and injurious practice, leading many surgeons to forsake Lister's techniques. Progress was achieved incrementally by committed reformers such as Agnes Hunt, who founded England's inaugural orthopedic hospital at Bawchurch in 1900, using rigorous antiseptic protocols. In 1889, William Halsted at Johns Hopkins created rubber gloves primarily to safeguard the hands of his chief nurse, Caroline Hampton, who later became his wife, from abrasive antiseptic treatments. The practice proliferated following a significant enhancement in his surgical outcomes. By the 1890s, the transformation in medical hygiene was fully entrenched. In 1886, German surgeon Ernst von Bergmann implemented steam sterilization of tools, advancing the research conducted by Charles Chamberlain at the Pasteur Institute. The mortality rate for major surgery at Massachusetts General Hospital decreased from 43% in 1870 to 4% by 1896. William Osler noted in his 1892 textbook, "The contemporary hospital operating room would be unrecognizable to surgeons from merely 20 years prior." The revolution encompassed more than surgical procedures. In 1889, with the inauguration of Johns Hopkins Hospital under William Welch's guidance, even the selection of building materials prioritized their capacity for cleanliness and disinfection. This major transformation in medical practice mirrored the wider societal upheavals of the Victorian era. The society that adopted public cleanliness and personal hygiene was prepared to accept germ theory. In 1891, Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. remarked on the transformations he observed, "Science is the topography of ignorance." From several elevated vantage points, we triangulate extensive areas, encompassing boundless unknown particulars. We cast the lead and extract a small amount of sand from depths we may never get with our dredges. How did the Victorians keep themselves clean? In 1851, as attendees admired the Crystal Palace exhibition in London, few recognized they were observing the inception of a hygiene revolution. Included in the exhibitions was the Refreshing Room, showcasing George Jennings' groundbreaking flush toilets, a novelty that accommodated 827,280 attendees throughout the exhibition, each paying a penny for the experience. The Times newspaper indicated that numerous visitors attended the exhibition to witness the water closets, with Queen Victoria herself expressing astonishment at the magical disappearance of waste. Jennings asserted, "The civilization of a society can be assessed by their domestic and sanitary facilities, embodying the Victorian ethos of advancement via hygiene." Prince Albert, a fervent advocate for sanitary reform, personally sanctioned the installation, remarking in his diary that adequate facilities for hygiene could mitigate the transmission of cholera. The evolution of personal grooming in this period was extraordinary. In stylish London barbershops such as Truffett and Hill, founded in 1805 and still in operation, gentlemen congregated not only for haircuts but also for the most recent societal gossip. Their hair was coiffed with costly bear grease, authentic Russian bear fat, priced at up to 5 shillings per ounce, equivalent to a day's earnings for a competent laborer. Bear farms were built in England expressly for the production of grease due to the prevalence of the practice. In 1848, the renowned diarist Charles Greville noted that no gentleman of quality would appear in public without his hair appropriately styled, using bear's grease. By 1850, however, more economical options appeared, such as Macassar oil, which became renowned for its use in anti-Macassar cloths placed on chairs to avert grease stains. Rowland's Macassar oil, marketed as containing the rare and unique properties of the Macassar nut, actually comprised a blend of coconut oil and floral essences, achieving yearly sales exceeding 50,000 bottles by 1840. Hair washing was rare, as many adhered to the counsel of physician J.C. Atkinson, who cautioned that regular washing could harm the tone and health of the scalp. Mr. Wheeler, Queen Victoria's personal hairdresser, advised that the royal hair be washed just once every 3 weeks. Women utilized powder-based dry shampoos, whilst the affluent engaged personal maids to brush their hair 100 times each night using silver-handled brushes valued at £5, equivalent to a month's income for a governess. The procedure was immortalized in Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, in which the Duchess's cook energetically strokes the baby with analogous gestures. The inaugural commercial shampoo, launched by German hairdresser Charles Kieser in 1890, vowed to maintain the natural luster and hue of the hair. Kieser's Berlin salon gained immense popularity, resulting in waiting times frequently surpassing 3 hours, attracting clients such as European aristocracy. The pursuit of beauty occasionally resulted in fatal consequences. Women in high society utilized arsenic-infused face lotions to attain a desirable pale complexion, while Dr. Campbell's safe arsenic complexion wafers claimed to create the most exquisite complexion that one could envision. The renowned beauty author Harriet Hubbard Aird elucidated these perils in her 1899 publication, A Complete Guide to Beauty, recounting how a New York socialite ingested arsenic wafers until her teeth deteriorated. Lead-based hair colors and facial cosmetics were also prevalent and hazardous. Maria the renowned Beauty Gunning, Countess of Coventry, succumbed of lead poisoning at the age of 27 in 1760 due to her cosmetics regimen, yet, comparable items continued to be favored for decades. The stylish Bloom of Ninon face powder, promoted in Punch magazine during the 1870s, contained sufficient lead to induce significant neurological harm, whereas Dr. Mackenzie's arsenic complexion pills remained available until 1901, when they were ultimately prohibited after resulting in 24 recorded fatalities in London alone. Contrary to popular opinion, Thomas Crapper did not invent the flush toilet, however, his enhancements and marketing acumen significantly contributed to its popularization. His inaugural invention in 1861 for the floating ballcock transformed water flow regulation. The showroom of his company in Chelsea, inaugurated in 1907, showcased operational toilet displays, controversial for the era yet great marketing. Edward VII, during his tenure as Prince of Wales, was so pleased by a visit to Crapper's showroom that he designated the company as sanitary engineers to the royal household in 1891. The water waste preventer, patented in 1881, rendered indoor toilets feasible by controlling water flow. By 1900, possessing a Crapper's valveless waste preventer emerged as a status symbol among the elite, exemplified by the Rothschild family commissioning 30 units for their new country house at Waddesdon Manor in 1889. His rival, George Jennings, remarked, "The advancement of contemporary civilization correlates directly with the efficacy of its water closets." The democratization of soap signified another notable transformation. Prior to 1850, soap in Britain was subject to substantial taxation, rendering it a luxury commodity. A pound of soap was approximately 1/3 of a laborer's weekly earnings. William Gladstone abolished the soap tax in 1853, coinciding with William Lever's launch of Sunlight soap in 1884. Lever's Port Sunlight factory in Merseyside evolved into a paradigm of an industrial hamlet, providing workers with unparalleled amenities such as hot running water and private bathrooms. By 1888, it manufactured 450 tons of soap per week, with astute advertising associating cleanliness with social advancement. Thomas Barrett of Pear's Soap, a rival of Lever, transformed advertising through his renowned Bubbles campaign, acquiring Sir John Everett Millay's picture for £2,200, about £270,000 today, for promotional purposes. The Salvation Army supplied complimentary soap alongside religious literature, adhering to the belief that cleanliness is indeed next to godliness. Public baths arose as instruments of social egalitarianism. Liverpool inaugurated Britain's inaugural public washhouse in 1842, conceived by architect James Picton and catering to over 1,000 individuals monthly. By 1896, London had 25 public baths catering to more than 2 million bathers each year. Frederick Furness founded the Bell Street Baths in London in 1846, pricing cold baths at 1 penny and hot baths at 2 pence, rates intentionally designed to be accessible for working-class families. The facility featured a conversation room designated for ladies to converse while their laundry dried. In Manchester, businessman Henry Potchin financed penny baths, enabling working-class families to bathe for a nominal charge. The renowned social reformer Lord Shaftesbury recorded in his diary in 1851 that these baths have contributed more to the moral improvement of the working classes than any multitude of sermons. The emergence of indoor plumbing revolutionized residential architecture. Architect Thomas Cubitt's designs for Belgravia townhouses in the 1820s incorporated dedicated bathrooms, although most extant residences necessitated substantial alterations. Queen Victoria's establishment of a hot air bath at Osborne House in 1861 contributed to the popularization of the concept among the affluent. The sanitary revolution resulted in the emergence of new professions. Plumbers gained prestige as tradesmen, while firms such as Doulton and Twyford amassed fortune via the production of bathroom fixtures. Thomas Twyford's Unitas model toilet was the inaugural successful one-piece ceramic toilet, receiving a gold medal at the 1882 National Health Society exhibition. By 1900, a properly outfitted bathroom could cost £100, comparable to an annual wage for a middle-class clerk. Yet, as architect Robert Kerr said in his 1871 publication, The Gentleman's House, no gentleman's house is complete without proper bathing facilities. The promotion of hygiene products specifically aimed at women as custodians of family health. The renowned 1886 advertising for Pear's Soap, featuring a kid in a bath and produced by artist John Everett Millay, positioned cleanliness as a mother obligation. The promotion was remarkably successful, resulting in a weekly sales boost from 3,000 to 27,000 bars. Women's publications such as The Lady and The Queen consistently included pieces on domestic hygiene, whilst Isabella Beeton's seminal Book of Household Management dedicated entire chapters to personal cleanliness, achieving sales of 60,000 copies in its inaugural year. The Women's Sanitary Association, established in 1857 by social reformer Louisa Twining, disseminated hygiene literature to working-class mothers, impacting over 100,000 households by 1870. As the century concluded, these technologies had drastically transformed daily existence. A 1897 advertisement in The Illustrated London News illustrated this transformation. The distinction between savage and civilized man is the distinction between unclean and clean habits. The Victorian fixation on cleanliness, propelled by scientific knowledge, social ambition, and commercial advancement, established personal hygiene norms that would impact future generations. In her 1860 work, Notes on Nursing, Florence Nightingale stated, "Every nurse ought to be diligent in washing her hands frequently throughout the day. If her visage is also pleasing, it is advantageous." This straightforward yet transformative guidance initiated contemporary hygiene practices. Exploring the challenges and resolve of the Victorian era reveals a society reshaped by the quests for hygiene and existence. Florence Nightingale's advocacy for sanitary hospitals and Joseph Lister's groundbreaking antiseptics transformed history and preserved lives. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to support our channel, please subscribe.